This Surbax network of Global Goals for Cities podcast series will deep dive into topics selected by the city partners to show how the SDGs link to concrete challenges. We have 10 episodes from 10 different European cities, plus one bonus episode, bringing different local expertise. We made them available with subtitles so that everyone can enjoy the knowledge, and each and every one of them is valuable to see and hear. Enjoy and let us know what you think in the comment section below, and don't forget to hit the like button and to share with your friends and colleagues.
Hi, this is Zdeněk from Jihlava.
Hi, I'm Karin from Tallinn. In this Global Goals for Project podcast episode, we have a chance to see more of Zdeněk from Jihlava and take a deeper dive into climate education, a concept dealing with skills and competence to act collectively and individually to face this super wicked problem and giant challenges.
Yes, I had the opportunity to interview a local expert, Boglarka Kurka Ivanegova, who gave away some of her key tips for building successful climate education programs. There is no single solution for climate change, but a multitude of entry points and levers.
I love the part where she encouraged all of us to do visioning exercises for the future if we solve the climate crisis, and also the part about being a climate warrior.
Absolutely. SDGs provide a useful framework for understanding the multitude of possible solutions. Boglarka stresses the need for having strong impact narratives and not let ourselves be fooled by too small, too little impactful actions.
Yeah, about the big, which means behavioral impact gap, where our intentions may or may not be environmental in their motivation, but the impact is sometimes really small. But stay with us and see and hear more in the upcoming episode.
In this episode, I sit down with Boglarka Kurka Ivanegova, who is the co-founder of Susto, Sustainability Tools, a consultancy that helps organizations understand and manage their impact on climate and society. Bogi focuses on climate education in both practice and policy. In her work, she has identified learning goals and key competencies for climate education. She also defined learning design principles that help to support them. So thank you, Bogi, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And maybe could you briefly start with telling us about your path to sustainability and climate education?
Sure. My path had a very fortunate beginning because I was privileged to study in schools which had sustainability and peace education in their core, in their DNA, in their mission statements. So I saw firsthand how powerful education can be when it's done well. So that's why I started creating little non-formal education programs. I co-founded Urban Garden, which was focusing also on teaching about food systems and ethnobotany. And I spent a couple of years then a bit later working at the Slovak Environment Ministry, focusing on the agenda of environmental education. So I had the chance to look into the policy world and international strategies of environmental and sustainability education. And a couple of years ago, it's 2.5 years ago, we decided to found our own organization. So we have more liberty in experimenting with educational programs, but also to do research in this area, which is something that is not always allowed in public service as a public servant. So yeah, this is in short, in a nutshell.
Yeah, thank you very much. So let's dive into the topic, which is climate education. I was just wondering, because in primary school I studied environmental education or through environmental education, and at the university it was sustainable development, and now we are talking about climate education. So maybe could you briefly explain the differences and the terms?
Sure. So indeed, the lines between these different kinds of education are kind of blurry, and we could even mix in active citizen education, peace education, global education. But not to complicate it even further, I think environmental education is mostly concerned with the natural world, with nature conservation, and when generally speaking about environmental education. And most environmental education programs are focused rather on individual action that one can take to protect the environment, what I can do in my position as an individual. Sustainability education has been defined as education that provides learners with the knowledge, skills and attitudes to support sustainable development. However, scholars are critical generally, which is great because they should be critical. They criticize the development part in sustainable development, because even sustainable development is not as clearly defined as it might seem, and some people argue that developing and continuing business as usual and growing is really not what we need at the moment. So there are some still theoretical misconceptions regarding sustainability education, and so when climate change education comes in, it is a bit more it's defined or delimited by a not simple topic, by a complex topic of climate change. But climate change education can be understood as gaining the knowledge, skills and competences for both individual and collective action for climate protection and to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. So I think climate change education focuses more on collective aspects, but also on political aspects that are necessary for the transformation that is ahead of us.
Okay. So when speaking about climate change, I consider it a wicked problem touching almost every aspect of individual's life and covering also, as you mentioned, the actions of individuals, but also systemic approaches by municipalities, companies, governments. So I just wonder, how do you distill such a broad topic into educational program?
Indeed, it is a wicked problem, and some would even say that it's a super wicked problem. So climate change is something that is both near and far, that is happening now and will have different manifestations in the future, and yet it's something that you cannot really touch in your hand, or it's not really tangible. So it's really a giant challenge. So I can speak from my own practice and my own research, which was focused on defining a consensus on what climate change education should entail. So what I did was I invited 17 Slovak and Czech multidisciplinary experts, so experts from environmental sustainability and climate change education fields, from ministries of environment, from business and youth representatives. And they had not a simple task of coming to an understanding, to a consensus on learning goals of climate change education. So we came up with a list of more than 60 items, which they deemed high priority, which just shows that indeed it is such a giant issue. But I tried to distill them in smaller chunks. So definitely it contains some basic understanding of climate science and how our climate system works, why it is important. But also looking at the underlying causes of ongoing human-induced climate change, of the impacts on various systems, as you rightly mentioned, on food systems, on natural systems, on our economic system. So looking still at the three pillars of sustainability. But also, as some experts pointed out in the interviews that I did, to be able to effectively and proactively cope with climate change, just knowing the facts and knowing truth is not enough, because there are so many invisible forces that affect how we humans think and act. So it is just as important to bring in a lot of values education. So to think about how our own mental models and frames of reference impact our actions. But I think I gave you a more complicated answer to your question. So if I wasn't right, please ask me some further questions.
No, I understand. I was thinking, you mentioned the theoretical knowledge, which I think it's understandable how you show it to your students, or how you? But I was also wondering, how do you develop the values, or how do you work with values in education?
It really comes to intentionally creating spaces in which students have the chance to reflect on what is important to them, and understanding how that what is important to them is affected by climate change, or how it would be affected, whether what they value is threatened by this crisis that we are all in. So deliberately creating reflection spaces. However, it's not only about our own values, because we are in it together, and my value system might be different from yours, or different from the value systems of my classmates, of my parents. We all know different kinds of people, so it's just as important to engage in dialogue with others, and try to understand how different value systems, how different values might be impacted by this giant, perplexing, complex, wicked problem.
So, what does the ideal program look like?
Okay, ideal program, big question. I'm not sure if I would love to believe that it is possible to make an ideal program. I have a couple of ideas or design principles that should be there that learning designers or teachers should think about when they are creating programs, and I did my little notes. So the first one, as I already mentioned, is questioning our own mental models. I focus mostly on working with young people and young adults, and of course they are really just in the process of developing their own worldviews and their own. Well, when you're young, when you're in puberty, you are just you're just beginning to feel the pressure of social norms around you, or not, depending if you're a rebelling kind of teen. But harnessing the potential of peer learning. So I believe it's really important to show young people or peers who are already active in the climate movement, or doing some activities of their own. So to show success stories and to see that your peers have made it, just kind of overcoming that sense of I'm young, that means that I cannot really do anything. So showing motivating case studies, and introducing peers, not just to idolize them, but to have someone there who can help them explain how they overcome problems. This is an issue that is really deeply emotional to young people. So having someone who can also be there to share, to share, exactly. So that is, I think, another important thing. Third, I also think it's super important for young people, if I decide to act to protect climate or any sort of action, I have these, and you have these mechanisms in your brain that are automatically evaluating whether you believe that this action would be or would not be successful in the end. So simply said, cultivating experiences that yes, I can manage this issue, and yes, we can do something together. So cultivating self and collective efficacy is another important ingredient in the ideal program recipe. So essentially you can do it by creating opportunities or academic literature would say mastery experiences. So for example, project-based learning, in which students create something tangible, something which they can be proud of, something they did together, something that they can refer to as a collective piece or something like that. So these are ways to cultivate this efficacy. I can keep going, but I have 3 more points for this ideal program recipe. Another important part is understanding that climate change has a diversity of solutions. I know you're working with the SDGs a lot, and it just says how many, like how many SDGs there are and the partial goals, and there are so many entry points and entryways into the topic. So I think it's really important to show like a taste, like
the variety
of ways you can engage, because even if you are inclined towards graphic design, that doesn't mean that you cannot be part of the solution. That you can be a designer that helps communicating according to climate communication principles. That you can harness your own talents and passions to be part of the solution. So that is another point. And when talking about solution, and I know you like this point, the climate change is a big problem, but not just big in that it's large, but it's an acronym of. BIG is an acronym of something called behavior impact gap, which is a fancy, complicated way of saying that our intentions may or may be environmental in their motivation, but the impact is sometimes really small. So there are actions that are environmentally more significant than others. So it's very important to assume a narrative of impact and understand that in the grand scheme of things in the climate system, some measures, some solutions are more effective in bringing down carbon than others. And so I think adopting an impact narrative is also crucial. So we do not just fool ourselves that I have my metal straw and I'm a climate warrior. Very simplified illustration. And two last points. I think it's really important to cultivate our relationship to the future. In education we talk a lot about past, about our history, but less so about the fact that the future is still malleable. It's something we can shape and we can affect with our actions. So futures thinking in understanding what are the some pathways of the future, some scenarios if we do not act at all. Like I don't remember exactly. Is it 3.2 degrees Celsius warming that would happen if we just carry on with the current trajectory after the last COP, but also being able to picture what an ideal world would look like doing visioning exercises, trying to imagine how Jihlava or Budapest or Bratislava would look like if we manage to solve the climate crisis. But of course, it's not just about feeding blind idealism and bringing these two pathways together. So what is the problem now, what is the ideal future, and what is actually the pathway that we can achieve and that we can work towards. So finding that balance between these two. And last point is not forgetting that we are, as a wicked problem that is affecting all layers of society, we need to be in a continuous dialogue between diverse perspective and not to fall in the trap of some silver bullet or just one sort of a solution. So a continuous dialogue between perspectives, between innovations, between questioning our own solutions. So I guess it comes back to another important skill for the 21st century is learning how to learn, and so because we are continuously learning about the climate and climate change and its solutions as well.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much for the holistic explanation. Maybe let's move from the theory into practice. And I know you've been helping eco centers and in national parks to develop educational programs, and also together we've been working on Rizoma, which is educational program here in Jihlava. So maybe could you briefly expand on your experience?
Sure. I mean, it always depends on the capacities of each organization and in the context in which they are located. But these principles that I try to explain, I try to infuse in an exhibition, for example, for an eco center that is just being made. So providing opportunities. There's a wonderful, if I can be super specific, there's an amazing program and freely accessible software called En-ROADS. It's a climate simulator which allows you to simulate various climate actions and see how it would impact the global climate system. So really like allowing for experimentation with data, but to seeing your real life impact. That is the first tangible thing that comes to my mind. If we come to our joint project, Rhizoma is Rhizoma or rhizome in English. Rhizome are like roots, a type of a root system in which the roots may grow into various different directions, can intersect. For example, if you imagine a ginger root, what we want to achieve in our program is also to help young people understand that there are many different ways to grow in climate solutions. So we are working on a project-based program in which young people are learning first about the fundamentals of climate change and climate science and the trends that are ahead of us, and then they are motivated to create a vision of their future and find ways in which they can actually contribute to that future. So they are now designing their own business proposals for activities that are economically, environmentally, and socially sustainable. So not only focusing on economic growth, but creating something that could be of benefit to our region here. But Rhizoma is also about creating a social network that is free of advertising algorithms and other powerful interests, and it allows young people or old people to network and to learn from their experience as well.
Yeah, thank you for the explanation and also for this interesting conversation. We are running out of time, so maybe if you have some last words you would like to share with our listeners, perhaps suggest a resource or a book.
I'm not sure if you will be able to provide some links to your listeners, but I can definitely provide some resources, specific ones. The already mentioned En-ROADS Climate Simulator is one great resource. If you're a Slovak or Czech speaker, then you can join our Rhizome network for sure. And there are many networks for teachers that they can join to support themselves. I know there are multiple teach the SDGs or something like that, and the parts that are focusing on climate action that could be useful. I have too many resources, so it's really hard to pick up one. But I'm very happy to provide all the ones that I have collected.
Okay, and maybe last note, where our listeners can find you on LinkedIn or some social media? Of
course, they can find me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and our website is susto.earth.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Zdeněk.